I never planned for it to happen, but in that moment, it seemed like I had no choice. My life with Edward had become a routine. Wake up, go to work, come home, take care of the kids, go to bed, repeat. And while I loved him deeply, the spark between us was long gone. I didn't even realize when we had started to drift apart, but I could feel it. I remember that day clearly. I had just come back from another one of those exhausting days at the office, where everyone seemed to demand something from me. I was juggling work, home, and the kids, but no one seemed to notice. Edward had been working late for weeks, and while he came home and kissed me goodnight, I felt like I was just a roommate sharing space with him. I used to get excited when he'd come home. Now it was just another part of the day. That night, my friend Jamie texted me, asking if I wanted to go out. We hadn't had a girls' night in ages, and honestly, the idea sounded like the perfect escape. I'd had enough of being the dutiful wife and mom, of feeling invisible. So, without a second thought, I said yes. I slipped on a dress, the one I hadn't worn in months. It wasn't flashy, but it made me feel good, confident in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I was surprised by how much I'd missed this version of myself. The woman who had the energy to go out and feel desirable. The woman who was more than just a mother or a wife. Jamie and I met at the bar, and it wasn't long before we were laughing and talking like we were teenagers again. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and for the first time in forever, I felt alive. I wasn't just someone's wife or someone's mom. I was me, and for that moment, I didn't have to answer to anyone. That's when I saw him. John. He was standing by the bar, talking to a few friends. His eyes caught mine almost immediately, and for a split second, I could feel the weight of his gaze. He wasn't like the usual guys you see at bars, trying to make small talk or boast about themselves. He was quiet, but confident. The kind of confidence that wasn't arrogant but magnetic. He smiled at me, and I couldn't help but smile back. I wasn't sure what it was, but there was something in his smile that made me feel seen. Really seen. Jamie noticed too, of course. He's cute, she said with a wink. I didn't even know if I agreed, but there was something about him that made my heart race. John approached us after a while, and Jamie wasted no time in introducing us. I could tell she was already sizing him up, making sure he wasn't a creep. But there was something different about him. He wasn't pushy, just easygoing. We ended up talking for hours, and every minute that passed, I felt more and more like the woman I used to be. The woman who had a life before kids, before the routine, before everything had become so predictable. At some point, we started talking about our lives. Just casual stuff. But it felt more personal than anything I'd shared with Edward in weeks. I told him about my job, about my family, and about how things at home had become stale. He listened intently, nodding as if he understood. I get it, he said softly. Sometimes we get stuck in our roles, you know. And you forget who you were before all the responsibilities took over. I couldn't believe how well he understood. It felt like he saw right through me, like he knew exactly what I needed. And that was the moment the walls started to come down. It wasn't like I was looking for something else. I wasn't actively trying to cheat. I wasn't even unhappy with Edward, at least, not in the way I thought I should be. But there was a part of me that felt starved for attention, for validation, for someone to notice me, really notice me. And John, well, he was giving me that. I excused myself to the bathroom, my mind racing. Part of me told me to stop, to just go home and forget this ever happened. But another part of me, the part that hadn't felt alive in years, urged me to stay. When I returned, John was waiting by the door. He didn't say anything, just looked at me like he was waiting for me to make the next move. And I knew, deep down, that I had a choice. I could walk away, go home to Edward, and pretend like nothing happened, or I could take a step into the unknown. And I chose the unknown. I didn't expect it to be like this. I didn't expect to feel this intense. But when we walked out of the bar together, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement, like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. John's car was parked down the street, and we drove in silence for a while. I didn't know what to say, and he didn't press me for answers. It felt like we were both in a strange, new space, no expectations, no judgment. When we got to the hotel, I felt that rush again. Part of me screamed to stop, to think about everything I had to lose. But the other part, the part of me that had been suffocating for so long, just wanted to be free. And that's how I ended up in that hotel room, with John, making a choice that I didn't fully understand at the time. The moment felt wrong and right all at once, and as we kissed, I could almost convince myself that I wasn't betraying anyone. The next few hours blurred together. Passionate, overwhelming, and messy. I didn't think about Edward. I didn't think about anything but the way John made me feel alive. When it was over, I felt a strange emptiness settle in my chest. I didn't feel guilty yet. It was only afterward, when I started getting dressed and glancing at the clock, that reality started to creep in. But in that moment, all I could think about was how much I had wanted this, how much I needed this. And then, I went home. I didn't know what to expect when I walked in the door. But I certainly didn't expect what happened next. I walked through the door of our house, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt surreal, like I was stepping into a different life. A part of me wanted to crawl into bed, pretend everything was fine, and just go on with life as usual. But another part of me, the one that had spent the last few hours in a haze of excitement and guilt, was terrified of what might happen next. What would Edward say? As soon as I stepped inside, I saw him. Edward was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine absent-mindedly, the way he always did when he was lost in thought. But there was something off about him tonight. His eyes seemed distant, like he was deep in thought, and his face was tense. He looked up when I entered, his gaze lingering on me for just a second too long. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, like nothing had happened. I was good at hiding things. I always had been. He didn't respond right away, just gave me a long look before setting the magazine down on the coffee table. "Where were you?" His voice was calm, but there was something sharp in his tone. I could tell something was off, but I didn't expect what happened next. "I was out with Jamie," I replied, shrugging and trying to act as if everything was normal. "Just a little girls' night." He nodded, but his eyes never left me. I felt the weight of his stare, like he could see right through me. I suddenly felt self-conscious, like I was a child being caught in a lie. "Is that all?" he asked, leaning forward a little. His tone was casual, but there was an edge to it, something that made my stomach drop. I hesitated. I wasn't ready for this. I had only just returned from a night that felt like a different lifetime, and now here I was, standing in front of the man I'd married, wondering if I was going to tell him everything. Part of me wanted to confess, to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. But another part of me, the part that had felt so alive just hours ago, was trying to justify everything to myself. "It's just been a lot lately," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You've been working so much and I just needed some time away." He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me as if he were trying to figure something out. And then, as if I hadn't been caught yet, he spoke. "I think you should sit down." The chill in his voice made me feel uneasy. I sat down slowly, the last remnants of the excitement I had felt earlier fading into something darker. Edward reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. And then he showed me the video. I froze. My blood ran cold. I didn't need to see it to know what it was. It was a recording from the hotel lobby, the one where John and I had been just hours ago. The one where I had kissed him, where we had slipped away together, alone. Edward's eyes were no longer calm. They were filled with something I couldn't quite place: hurt, anger, disappointment. "I've been following you," he said, his voice shaking slightly. I had a feeling. I knew something was off. And then I saw this. I couldn't breathe. The weight of what I had done came crashing down on me in an instant, suffocating me. There was no hiding from this. No pretending it didn't happen. Edward had seen everything. I can explain," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't even sure if I believed my own words anymore. Edward shook his head. "No, there's nothing to explain. You did it. You chose to do this." He stood up, pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. I don't understand. We were supposed to be a team. I thought we had something good, something real. How long have you been feeling this way? How long have you been lying to me?" Tears started to well up in my eyes. I never thought it would come to this. I had always told myself that I could control it, that I could get away with just one mistake. But now here it was, in full view. Edward had been watching me, waiting for something, and now he had all the proof he needed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. The words felt so small, so inadequate. They couldn't fix what I had done. Edward turned to face me, his expression hard and cold. "Sorry, it's all you have to say. I've been working my ass off for this family. I've been here, I've been trying, and you do this?" I stood up, trying to make sense of the words I wanted to say, but nothing came out right. My mind was spinning, and all I could think about was how badly I had messed up. "I never wanted to hurt you," I said, my voice cracking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It was just one night. I wasn't thinking straight." He was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching mine, as if looking for any sign that I was telling the truth, that I regretted it. But the truth was, I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. I did regret it. I regretted betraying him, betraying our family. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore how alive I had felt, how wanted I had felt, how seen I had felt. "I didn't want to hurt you, Edward," I repeated, my voice more desperate this time. "I didn't. I don't know how to explain it." He shook his head. "You don't have to explain it. I saw everything. And that's enough." The silence between us stretched on for what felt like hours. It was thick, heavy, and suffocating. And then, Edward did something I didn't expect. He grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'm leaving," he said, his voice flat. "I can't do this. Not anymore." My heart dropped. "Edward, please, don't. I swear I never wanted this." But he didn't stop. He walked out the door without a second glance. I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to move. My world, our world, had just shattered. I had never felt so lost, so empty. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that I was the one who had done this. I had caused this pain. And there was no going back. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the door that Edward had just walked out of. I could still hear the faint sound of his car driving away, the engine fading into the distance. My chest was tight, my throat burning. I felt like I was choking on the enormity of what had just happened. My body was numb, but my mind was racing, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts I couldn't make sense of. I stumbled over to the couch, sinking down into it as if my legs couldn't hold me any longer. The room around me seemed to close in, the silence ringing in my ears. I wanted to scream, to break down, but nothing would come out. All I could do was sit there, paralyzed by the realization that everything I had built over the past 10 years was falling apart in front of me, and it was all my fault. I thought about the kids, about how they would never understand what had happened, how they would never know why their father left. And that was the hardest part. Thinking about how my actions would affect them. I had betrayed their trust without even realizing how deeply it would wound all of us. I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and now, everything felt broken beyond repair. The tears started to fall. I hadn't let myself cry when Edward confronted me, but now, alone in the quiet of our home, I couldn't hold back. I sobbed uncontrollably, clutching my hands to my face as the floodgates opened. I felt disgusted with myself. How had I let it go this far? How had I let myself do something so unforgivable? But deep down, a small voice in the back of my mind couldn't help but ask, what was it all for? I had been so desperate for attention, for someone to make me feel alive again. In a way, I had been seeking validation from John, from the rush of newness and excitement that came with being desired. But now that the dust had settled, it was clear that I had only destroyed what really mattered. I tried calling Edward, but he didn't answer. I sent a text, pleading with him to talk to me, to come back. But I knew it was futile. There was nothing I could say that would undo what I had done. I couldn't erase the hurt I had caused him. I couldn't take back the betrayal. And yet, as the hours dragged on, my thoughts kept returning to John. I couldn't deny the way he had made me feel. Important, wanted, noticed. That night had been more than just a mistake. It had been an escape from the suffocating weight of my life. I hadn't been thinking about Edward, about my family, or the consequences. In that moment I had felt free. But was it worth it? I wasn't sure anymore. I hated myself for what I had done, but there was a part of me that couldn't shake the memory of how alive I had felt in his arms. I had forgotten what that was like. Forgotten the joy of being seen, of being desired. And I hated that about myself. After a few hours, I couldn't sit still any longer. The walls were closing in. I grabbed my purse and headed out the door, unsure of where I was going. I just needed to move, to get away from the suffocating silence of the house, from the crushing weight of my own guilt. I needed air. I ended up driving aimlessly through the streets, my mind a tangled mess of regret and confusion. At some point, I pulled over by a small park and just sat in the car, staring out at the darkened playground. My reflection in the rearview mirror caught my eye, and I saw the tear-streaked face of a woman who had no idea how to fix what she had broken. I couldn't help but wonder how Edward was feeling. Was he as lost as I was? Or was he already on his way to moving on from me? I tried to imagine his face when he looked at me, when he thought of me now? What would he see? The woman he loved, or the one who had betrayed him so completely? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of it all pressed down on me again. I had ruined everything. A part of me wanted to call John, to reach out to him, and ask if he felt the same way. But I knew that was just a desperate attempt to hold on to something. Anything. That could make me feel better. But I also knew that calling him would only make everything worse. It would make me a fool. I had already hurt my family. I didn't need to hurt myself any further by getting tangled in a meaningless affair that had only been about my own selfish needs. I pulled my phone from my bag and stared at it for a moment, thinking about the texts I'd sent to Edward. He hadn't responded, and I knew I couldn't keep bombarding him with apologies. It was time for me to face the reality of what I had done. But what was that reality? Was it too late for us? Could we fix this? Or had I already destroyed everything beyond repair? I had no answers. Only the silence that stretched between me and the man I had once shared everything with. As the night wore on, I eventually made my way back home. But when I walked through the door, the house felt empty. Colder than it ever had before. I didn't know what I was expecting, but it certainly wasn't the hollow feeling that came over me. Edward was gone. The kids were asleep, and it felt like I was the only one left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I sat on the couch again, this time without the numbness I had felt earlier. Now it was full of pain. Raw, aching pain that I didn't know how to process. I had no one to talk to, no one to confide in, and I didn't even know where to begin picking up the pieces. I had made my choice, and now I had to face the consequences of that choice. What hurt the most was that I had no one to blame but myself. And then, as if the weight of it all wasn't enough, I heard a buzz from my phone. It was a message from Edward. My heart stopped. It simply said, "We need to talk." The moment I had been dreading had finally come, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was about to happen. My heart raced as I stared at the message on my phone. We need to talk. That simple sentence held so much weight. The reality of everything that had happened hit me again, like a punch to the stomach. He was willing to talk. But what would that conversation even look like? What could I say that would make any of this right? I didn't want to think about the possibility of losing him forever. The thought of Edward walking out of my life permanently, taking the kids with him, tore me apart. But I also knew I couldn't erase what I had done. I couldn't go back in time and undo the choices I had made. All I had now were the consequences, and the truth was, they felt heavier than I ever imagined. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. I had no idea when he was going to get home. The minutes dragged on, each one stretching into what felt like hours. I couldn't sit still, so I paced around the living room, nervously biting my nails, trying to prepare myself for the conversation that was coming. The silence in the house was deafening, but I could already feel the tension building, the weight of everything between us just hanging there. I thought about what I would say. Would I apologize again? Would that be enough? Could I explain what led me to this point without sounding like I was making excuses? I didn't know. There were so many emotions swirling in me, guilt and regret taking up so much space. But there was something else too. A need to be understood, a desperate need for him to see that I never meant for things to go this far. When Edward finally came home, I could hear the car pull into the driveway. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I felt paralyzed. I wanted to hide, to avoid this confrontation, but there was no running from it. No escaping what was coming next. He stepped through the door, his face unreadable. His expression was colder than I had ever seen it, and I couldn't tell if he was angry, hurt, or both. But there was something else, too. A sense of finality. Like he had already made up his mind about us, and nothing I could say would change it. He didn't speak right away. He just stood there, staring at me. The silence between us stretched out like a thick fog, and I felt like I was suffocating. His eyes searched my face, and I couldn't tell what he was looking for. Maybe it was the truth, or maybe it was just a reason to walk away. Finally, he broke the silence. "Do you even know what you've done?" His voice was low, controlled, but it carried an undercurrent of pain that made my stomach twist. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I know. I know exactly what I've done. You know. His voice cracked, and for a split second, I saw the hurt in his eyes. The hurt I had caused. "You've broken this family, Christina. You've broken me." I flinched at the sound of my full name. It was a name he only ever used when he was angry, when things were serious, and hearing it like that made the guilt in my chest burn even deeper. "I'm sorry, Edward," I am so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen, I said, my voice trembling. Do you think saying sorry is gonna fix it? He snapped. Do you think you can just say sorry and everything will go back to normal? That this betrayal won't haunt me forever? I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes again. I don't know what I thought. I don't know why I did it. I just needed to feel something. I needed to feel alive again. There it was, the truth raw and unfiltered. It had been buried under layers of excuses and justifications, but now, with him standing in front of me, I couldn't hide it anymore. I was lost, Edward. I whispered, my voice breaking. I felt invisible to you. I've been feeling like I was just a mom, just your wife. But I was me too, you know. I was someone before all this, before the kids, before everything became about what was expected of me. And I was looking for something I thought I lost. Edward looked at me for a long time, his face unreadable. His jaw clenched as he processed what I had said. You think I didn't feel the same way? He finally said, his voice cold. You think I haven't been stuck in this marriage too? Do you think I didn't notice how we were drifting apart? I've been trying, Christina. I've been working to make this work. But you were too busy looking for someone else to notice what was right in front of you. I never meant to hurt you, I said desperately, my voice barely a whisper. I never wanted to lose you. You already did, he replied quietly, his voice soft but final. You lost me the moment you decided to go to that hotel. You lost me the moment you chose someone else over our marriage. The weight of his words hit me harder than anything else. It was true, I had lost him. I had lost us. And there was nothing I could say that would make it right. I had crossed a line. And no matter how much I apologized, no matter how much I begged for forgiveness, the damage had been done. I'm sorry. I whispered again, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry for everything. Edward didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, staring at me, and in that silence, I could feel all the walls we had built between us. He was already walking away, his heart already closed off to me. I stood there, feeling the sting of his words and the weight of my actions. I had destroyed the one thing I had always relied on, the stability of our marriage. And now, I was left with nothing but the consequences of my choices. I watched as he turned to walk away, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the indifference that had settled in between us. I wanted to say something more, to ask for another chance, to beg him to forgive me, but the words didn't come. I couldn't keep asking him to stay when I knew I had already pushed him too far. I could feel the weight of everything crashing down on me. I had made my choices, and now I had to live with them. The man I loved, the man I had built my life with, was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. And as I stood there, watching him walk out of our home, I realized that no amount of apologies could ever bring him back. Weeks had passed since that night, but it felt like years. The house, once filled with the sound of laughter and the hum of daily life, was now eerily quiet. I moved through the motions, making breakfast for the kids, picking them up from school, answering emails, but everything felt hollow. Edward hadn't come back. I knew deep down that he wasn't coming back. The apology texts, the desperate phone calls, they all went unanswered. He had left with his things that night, and I was left alone with the weight of my own mistakes. I tried to keep everything together for the kids, but there were moments when I'd find myself staring out the window, wondering how I could have let it get this far. I kept asking myself, was it worth it? I knew the answer now. No, it wasn't worth it. I had given in to the temptation of feeling desired, of escaping my own reality, but at what cost? I had shattered the only thing that truly mattered, my family. The guilt was a constant companion, never letting me forget the consequences of my actions. And while I still felt the sting of loneliness, I had to face the fact that it was self-inflicted. I saw Edward sometimes, dropping the kids off or picking them up. He was distant, his eyes cold whenever they met mine. It broke me to see him like that, so far away from the man I once knew so well. But there was no going back. I couldn't undo what I had done, and neither could he. I wasn't sure what the future held for me anymore, but I knew that this chapter of my life was over. I had lost something irreplaceable, and it was a loss I would have to carry with me forever.